Welcome to part 3 of increasing your breath hold and depth while spearfishing. It's been a little while between part 1 and 2, but it's a great day today and the visibility looks good, so we might go out a little bit deeper. Today we're going to focus on 20 meters to 30 meters. Now if you're still struggling with the 10 to 20 meters, I would suggest that sticking at that and doing as much volume at that sort of comfortable depth as you can, and it will condition your body and get you more and more confident and comfortable in doing deeper diving. Ideally what we're trying to achieve is we want to separate the depth and holding your breath with the hunting aspect of spearfishing. We want to be really comfortable so we don't have to think too much about holding our breath. If we're having to think too much about holding our breath, it's going to take away from the hunting aspect. We want to be able to make our dives to whatever depth it is and be able to focus on the task at hand, whether that's spearfishing or just enjoying the scenery. You're going to hear a lot of repetition from our previous episodes as the same principles apply whether you're diving 10 meters or maybe in this case 20 to 30 meters. The only thing that changes is we need to become more fluid with our movements. Being fluid with your approach when doing these deeper dives is so important, as you're going to save so much oxygen and burn less energy. This all starts with the duck dive. Notice how smooth the duck dive is without too much flailing, too much splashing or any funny movements. It's so important, as that's going to make or break your dive. Practicing your duck dive and ensuring that you're weighted correctly with the depth that you're diving is very, very important and worth thinking about. As mentioned in previous episodes, this is not purely about freediving. You'll see that I'm spinning around and moving a lot on my way down, which is not going to optimize my breath hold, but it is going to optimize my hunting and positioning me in the right place on the bottom. There's no point in trying to maximize your breath hold, get to the bottom, and then you're facing the wrong direction, like this case here. You're better off looking on the way down, keeping yourself calm in case you can shoot something on the way down, or position yourself in the right direction. To help with this deeper diving, if it doesn't look like anything's going to come in, it's worth bailing out of your dive early and conserving that oxygen and that energy for later in the day. Often the case, especially in New Zealand, is if a fish is going to come in, it's normally going to come in the first minute or so. Notice on the way to the surface, I'm not shrugging or moving my shoulders side to side. Try and keep yourself stable. Focus on keeping yourself calm and getting yourself to the surface. I stop kicking about 5 meters from the surface as my positive buoyancy takes over. Although lots of people might talk about trying to warm up into your deeper dives, you actually want to do the opposite. So in this case, when we're diving 20 to 30 meters, I'm actually going to do the deeper stuff to start with, most likely, as my body's going to be the most fresh and I haven't taxed my body through the day. Although it might feel a little bit uncomfortable, it's going to be a lot better for you in the long run. You're actually going to be able to hold your breath longer. Breathing technique on the surface. I think a lot of the time people overthink this. What I'm doing here and trying to show you is I'm breathing deep into my stomach, then following up by breathing into my chest. Now you don't need to force your breaths, you don't want to do fast breaths, you don't want to force too deep of a breath, just calm, slow breathing. You're trying to get your heart rate down and get yourself comfortable before you dive. I make my dive, I take my snorkel out,
and we'll talk about this later, about the importance and how you fit your snorkel. You'll notice how my snorkel just dropped down and tucked under my chin. Fortunately, I'm weighted correctly, so you'll see that my fin kicking slows reasonably quickly once I get to about 10 meters. I'm inspecting all on the way down because in this broken country there could be a fish anywhere. And again, there's no point in me holding my breath for a long time if I don't get anything. I'm trying to see where all the fish are hanging out and figure out which direction I want to face. I've spotted some snap in the distance, so I'm trying to get myself into a good ambush spot. With a slight rise above me, it allows me to stay nice and low but still have a good field of view. Try and avoid erratic movements as they're going to scare fish and burn oxygen. Surface interval is going to be so important for these dives because I want to make sure that I conserve energy and I recover correctly. In this case, the dive's around about 27 meters in about 2 minutes 40, so I want to at least double that time on the surface.
It's really important between my dives that I try not cut corners. Even though I feel really good and I don't feel tired at all, if I cut corners, it's a tax that's going to hit me later on in the day, and it's going to reduce my dive time then. So I want to try and give myself as much time between dives as I can and not stress myself too much. And it's going to be better for me in the long range throughout the day.
I get myself up ahead in the current and take my time on the surface. And as you'll see here, you don't always obviously have to dive deep. While breathing up, a nice John Dory just appears out of nowhere. And it's much easier diving to 5 meters to shoot it than it is to 25 meters.
Just while you're trying to breathe up to dive really deep, a John Dory swims underneath me at about 6 meters below the surface. You don't always have to dive deep, obviously, to get fish.
We've done quite a few dives and we're going to head back to the boat and move spot. But just before that, obviously we do some shallow diving as well. So I'm going to see if I can find a few crayfish. You can see me clean miss this nice buck that's sitting out in the open. Try not to make the same mistake with this one. If you're breaking up your deeper diving with some shallower stuff, looking for crayfish or snapper, be mindful of the recovery even when you're in the shallows, because doing those fast, repetitive dives are going to tax your body during the day, and it's going to make it more dangerous and a bit more difficult to dive deeper later in the day. So even though it's really shallow, I still take my time and do recover on the surface right up in the shallows. It was great. There seemed to be a whole heap of crays in the shallows. Even though there was some dodgy grabbing, I did manage to get a feed. Something I can't stress enough is recovering as well on the boat and drinking plenty of water. Staying hydrated is going to be key to be able to repeat lots of deep dives and make sure you do it safely.
A few tips with your gear when doing some slightly deeper diving, especially the deeper we go, we want to refine everything a little bit more. With my weight belt, you see I have a rubber weight belt and I've got coated weights. Coated weights are just a little bit nicer because they're not going to move like a standard weight would. And I've got different size blocks here, so now I'm going to go a little bit deeper. I'm going to take this ½ kilo off. And although it doesn't sound like a lot, it's really important to refine your weight when you're diving deeper. Chuck that on. And the good thing about your rubber weight belt, it's going to stay where you want it to be. And the coated weights are going to give it even a little bit more grip. Now this tassel here, I don't want to tuck this in, because if you're in trouble and you're in danger, you want to be able to grab this and pop your weight belt really quickly. And a rubber weight belt is spring loaded. Snorkel, simple. I don't need a dry top or anything on it if I'm doing deeper spearing. And the key thing with this is I actually want to wrap it around the back of my head. I don't want it flailing on the side and catching lots of water. So in this case, and this is useful for you guys using a head GoPro mount, I actually tuck it underneath my GoPro strap like that, around the back of my head, and it helps to make sure my GoPro doesn't come off. As well as you see, it sits in the optimum spot on my head when I'm in the water. And fins wise, you want your long free diving fins, and in this case, I have really light carbon fibre fins. Just less weight, more responsive when I'm doing deeper diving. Also, what you might find comes in really handy is using a reel on your spear gun when you're diving deeper, because the drag of the float line, although it doesn't seem like a lot, it's going to hinder you a little bit on the way back to the surface as well as on the way down. But you've also got to be really cautious with a reel gun and educate yourself first. Ready to go.
As mentioned earlier in the video, I try to do my deepest diving and my longer dives at the start of the day. So as we progress through the day, I'm not trying to push my body too hard. So we've moved to another spot here on a weed edge that's around about 20 to 25 meters. Plan your day out if you're going to do deeper diving to make sure that you're doing it safely and you're able to recover well from each dive. Although you can't see it so much here, when I get to the bottom, try and lie nice and flat and comfortably. Don't arc your head too much up, because if you do that, you're going to make yourself uncomfortable, you're going to burn more oxygen. Still need to get a couple more fish before I go home, as it hasn't been the most fishy day. Take your time on the surface to relax and recover between your dives. As mentioned earlier, at least double the dive time on your watch with your surface interval. Don't count loading your spear gun and fighting a fish into your surface interval. Your surface interval should just be you lying quietly on the surface, relaxing. Your dive watch is a useful tool to tell you how deep you are diving, how long you're diving, and your surface interval, but make sure that you listen to your body. Being weighted correctly on these deeper dives and wearing less weight than I would if I'm in the shallows is really important, because that means I'm able to get to maybe 60 or 70% of the depth that I'm diving, and I'm going to slowly sink to the bottom. If I'm too heavy, I'm going to start sinking really rapidly, and that's going to put my dive off. And obviously I have to drag that extra weight back up with me to the surface. You're going to be a far more efficient hunter if you weight yourself correctly to the depth that you're diving. The best way to improve your depth while spearfishing is to actually practice and do it. When you're going out for your dives, you don't necessarily need to be going out really deep and pushing your limits all the time, but going out from the shallows and doing somewhere in the vicinity of 60 to maybe 70% of your maximum depth and spending more time in that depth, you're going to prolong your breath hold and you're going to make many improvements. Don't expect to jump from diving 10 meters to comfortably to 30 meters overnight. It's not a necessity to need to dive deep in New Zealand. Obviously you can achieve pretty much everything and get most of the fish that we're going to encounter in New Zealand in 0 to 10 meters. But it does help with the deeper diving, giving you more bottom time and more comfort in these shallower depths. So that means that you're able to approach fish from further away, and you're able to separate the need to hold your breath and maximize your hunting aspect. We've got a ground bait here with lots of snapper on it. Unfortunately, this piece of kelp is strategically placed in front of my camera. We were able to be calm, relaxed, and focus on approaching the fish rather than panicking about needing to breathe.
I hope you enjoyed episode 3 with the 20 to 30 meters and were able to take some ideas and maybe some tips to use next time you're heading out. But remember, if you're not comfortable diving those sort of depths, you're far better off diving a little bit shallower and doing a lot more volume at those depths that you're comfortable and safe at. And with time, you'll slowly progress little by little by little, and then you'll be able to dive deeper as well as hold your breath longer.